Okay, well, so we're gathered here today. We're going to have a discussion about a collaborative cohabitation agreement. And it's really a interesting 5-year plan where we're asking people to think about their future and plan for their success. And it has a legal component, an emotional, and a financial component. We know those are three very important areas in people's lives and their relationships. So we had the benefit, the three of us, to go through this exercise. I'm Jean-Jacques Paquette, and I'm a lawyer and with some years of experience in family law, and found this to be just a great experience and quite a learning one as well. So I'll allow my partners to explain who they are and what their role is in this.
Okay. I'm Irene Caulfield-Cook, and a social worker with about 30 years experience.
And I'm Linda Cartier, a certified registered financial planner and chartered financial divorce specialist, also with 25-ish years experience.
So Linda, Irene, and I have had some experience and had some collaborative experience working together, and that was a very helpful part to this process. Sure. So that we knew each other, we knew how we worked and how we could rely on each other, and so that we came up with this notion as to how we could help the clients in this particular case. And sort of as a the client initially came to me, and she wanted to know, how does this work? So she was furthering a relationship and wanted to know how would they go about doing a cohabitation agreement, or essentially what was the law, and how could they proceed. So I seized the day and thought about this would be a great opportunity for this client to have a good heart-to-heart, good solid conversations with her partner as to how they would see their lives going on together, and also to address what might happen if, for instance, it didn't work out, and sometime in the next 5 years, and what would they think that would be an appropriate way of dealing with this. So the client was very interested and quite trusting of professionals and understanding what they could bring to the table, and she really wanted to speak with a financial planner and also a family relations specialist, or who could give them a hand. I would say that was the most attractive part in this process when I was talking to her, sort of comparing that to the traditional model of simply two lawyers. So I had her discuss the matter with her partner. Her partner communicated with a collaborative lawyer, and then the process started. Mm-hmm. So it was, as I say, it was really important to them to have this contact with the other professionals, and we just started off on this particular instance with the two lawyers and the two clients, and set up a game plan as to how they thought they might want to proceed, so we took it from there, and that led essentially to a meeting between the lawyers and Irene and Linda, the financial planner, and the family relations specialist, so that we could see what we could design. So perhaps Irene, you could talk about how those meetings went with the four of us, and Linda
Sure.
too.
Sure.
Okay.
I think we were very fortunate that when it came to the professionals, everybody had worked together, mm-hmm. but also had a great deal of experience and trust and faith in the system. So that really allowed people to be able to talk about not just how we foresaw this going, but maybe any concerns we had or any worries. The clients presented in a very similar state of mind, which was exceptional. They had done a lot of work as a couple, and were now looking to fine-tune and work on a document that they were then able to say, okay, this is how we carry forward. So I think it put everybody in a similar circumstance. So both the professionals and the clients were all sitting down and saying, how do we develop this so that it becomes something that helps people move in the direction that they want to go. And so I think it went far smoother than we could have anticipated it was going to go.
Yeah, for sure. I think it does make a big difference that we sat down and discussed how did we foresee this working, who was going to speak to them first after the initial time frame, and make sure that all the goals and concerns that they had would be properly addressed. And it was, I think it worked best personally because they were fully invested in being involved. So it wasn't like, here, I'm giving this to you, you fix something, which is, not nearly as successful for anybody. And the fact that they understood from us that we were completely open to, it's all about the clients, whatever direction you want to go in, we're going to help you get there and find the tools that tailor-made this solution for them. So I think that made a huge difference, that there was this very give and take, diverse way that, anything was possible.
Yeah. And I think there was that recognition that each of the professionals was bringing in their area of expertise, but
Sure.
the experts were the two individuals.
Absolutely.
And the couple.
Yeah.
And so we look to them to help us use this tool to assist them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So these particular clients as well were quite interested in having an idea as to the cost, and it was just one of the features in this instance where the professionals came together after meeting with the clients and getting some idea as to what they were dealing with. And so we came together and prepared a budget, which we thought likely we would be able to come within. And it was clear with them that if things developed in another direction, then the cost might be otherwise. But so they were feeling very confident, I think, with that, and they were very appreciative as to the caliber of the professionals, in the sense that they knew the experience was there with couples whose relationship had not succeeded. And so they were able to recognize that the professionals would be able to give them a lot of tips and would have a good idea as to when do things work and when do they not work, and what are the difficult conversations where people maybe trip up or simply don't have when they're developing their relationship. So all of that was good. We ended up getting our work done. I was able to speak with the other lawyer as well. We had a good relationship, and we set out pretty quickly what the legal issues might be, including one of the partners had more assets than the other, and how might that be dealt with. And so there was that kind of consideration, and wanting to put things into joint names and what effect would that have if due to the agreement, dealing with support issues. So we were able to give them an outline of the law, as you would in a collaborative setting. And though what became important and would allow them to actually make decisions was the work they then did with the other professionals on a one-on-one. And so we know that the emotional aspect is very, very important. And so maybe Irene, you can help us, give us some idea as to what kind of topics and what kind of conversations did you have with the clients?
Well, I think it was a lot of the topics of discussions that they had, but it was looking at them from slightly different angles. And so the example I always use is, for both there was a desire to bring children into their family, but when each thought about it, they each had a very different visualization within themselves as to what that would be. And they were both surprised to see that each other had sort of thought about it in different terms as to ages and number of children. So they had the discussions, but they hadn't really followed them through. In the same way with sort of family traditions, what are the traditions in your family? What do you want to keep? What do you want to add to your family? What do you do in the situations where people need support as family members? So with an aging population, hypothetically talking about maybe grandparents and somebody needs additional care. What were each of their thoughts on that? Career paths. How would they support each other? What were sort of those bigger steps going forward? We're both thinking of same idea. Was one thinking about maybe going back to school? And so really following through a whole lot of factors that can influence a relationship, but in a very positive way. So here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I hope to do. And giving them the opportunity to say, no, that sounds exactly like what I'm thinking about. Because I think when we talk about things as human beings, we talk about what we think, and we assume the other person's thinking the same thing. And it doesn't mean they're thinking something different, but they might not be thinking about it the exact same way. And so it really allows that opportunity to follow through some of those topics and issues and really build a plan. Because if you build a plan, then it's less likely to become something negative. Mm-hmm. Something that you then find out that maybe you're in absolute disagreement about when a crisis happens. So it was about following through a lot of conversations they had and just taking them a little bit farther. And once again, drawing on the experience of what's happened with other families. Mm-hmm. You know, where have been some situations where those are exceptional challenges to families? And how do they envision moving forward and having a plan?
So Linda,
Mm-hmm.
these clients were in the habit of having conversations on their own, and they covered new ground when they were with Irene. And so what were they like in terms of their financial experience and how much attention they paid to financial matters, and what were they looking for in this process?
Sure. They actually sort of, from start to finish, what they thought they were looking for and what they actually wound up understanding was quite different. There wasn't the same understanding personally for each of them about their finances, because one had done more work on saving and building assets, and the other one hadn't. So one just was a little bit more comfortable dealing with their finances. So there was like a bit of an education piece to deal with. And then what they discovered was even the fact that, you know, the person who had been looking after their finances and saving and building assets, they actually didn't understand as much of it as they would like to. They discovered, oh, you know what, I'd like to learn more. And so there were requests to develop some parts that I hadn't even thought were important in this, but it was a request from them. It also was very important that they still wanted autonomy, so they wanted to have some individuality, but they also wanted to have a household budget that was combined and enmeshed together. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, we developed some tools for them to use and for us to use, that we could enter information and it would sort of filter through everywhere and provide that exact template for them to use, because they really wanted more than I had expected. We want to know exactly how much we're going to do, who's going to do that, how much, and you know what's that going to look like, because after some of the conversations they had with Irene, there was like a vacation pocket that they had, and there was an education pocket, and there was potentially, you know, what if we have children, and pooling some money for that. So they wanted it broken down just like a roadmap, actually, as to how much money was going to go to each, and within how many years would they achieve it based on these kind of savings, so that they could feel confident that they were going to actually achieve the goals. It wasn't just in somebody's mind. It was, once you put it on paper and you could see that if you do this, this is where you arrive. That's, you know, that made them feel, okay, we're good to go with that. The same as once there was this difference in their equity, how was that going to feel at this transition that they chose, that today they recognized there was a difference, and if they didn't work out, it would remain a difference, but that over time this was going to graduate into they jointly owned the family home. So it was very much being able to address what they requested and just find a way to make that happen.
And I think there was an education piece in the work that you did as well about the common language around finance.
Very much so.
So what does that mean? And when we say that we want to do this, what does that mean? And are we using the same language as maybe the bank is using?
Right.
So really allowing them to be able to have very confident discussions
Yeah.
about their finances as they went forward.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I would say so.
I think from the lawyer's perspective, one of the major differences in working with this collaborative cohabitation agreement is in fact the level of confidence that the clients have. And so they start, of course, with initial apprehensions,
Sure.
and partially that's why they're there, but as time goes on, that confidence level builds, and it's confidence built on reason. It's a there's a good reason to be that confident, and so as we move forward, it's becomes far simpler to be negotiating the terms of an agreement. You basically have parties who are much clearer as to their intentions, right, and who are much more willing to look at the risks involved. They're more able to look at them and much better able to assess them. And so, what you have are confident, safe-feeling clients who are able to listen very well and who can concentrate and who are really very much at the table. Yeah. So that was from the lawyer's perspective. Very good, somewhat refreshing compared to some of the other situations that we see. Certainly, again, in this collaborative field, the two lawyers were working together and ensuring that their respective clients' interests were being met. So the clients were very interested in this 5-year plan. What are we going to do for the next 5 years? So we're excited about that, and we want to make this work. And the parts in the agreement that dealt with, well, what if this doesn't work, were handled far more easily and actually fairly quickly, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. So the negotiation of the agreement really did not take a great deal of time. It took some drafting, and there are some particularities with respect to the cohabitation agreement and the legalities in terms of what's going on there. So maybe just to explain that, Linda indicated that there was a pretty detailed financial plan that was put onto a map for them, and so the clients insisted, and I think with reason, that form part of the agreement. Now, it formed part in the sense that it was a schedule to the agreement. It was clear to the parties that this is our goal, this is our plan, but we understand we may have to vary from our plan, and we may stray, and we'll talk about it. And that was one of the key things, which was that if we're having trouble following through on the plan, we agree, and it's in the agreement, we agree that we will go back to our collaborative professionals and see if we can get some help to sort out those issues. And in the meantime, the clients understood. So these are stated intentions, and at the same time, the plan would not necessarily be so binding that if someone strayed from it, that was automatically a breach of the agreement and all of their work was for naught, and if ever they broke up, this wouldn't apply anymore. So they understood this is still the basic terms, if you wish, on a breakup are still binding, they're valid, and at the same time, this is how we expect and we hope to operate. One of the things that gave them confidence, and I think the lawyers' confidence, was the fact that this is a 5-year period. So some things will happen in a 5-year period, but they're not likely to be of such a nature as if a relationship had gone on for 30 years or 40 years. And so that made it, again, all the more manageable. And they were clear that if ever there was a major move that was made, for instance, if they adopted a child, or if they had a child, or if they decided to, in this particular case, if they decided to get married, they would start the process anew, and we would have more discussions about what that would entail. And in that way, it brought the costs down because we weren't trying to imagine every possible scenario. We were working on what was likely to happen.
And I think they were building it when they were in a situation where they had every faith and trust in each other and
Sure.
love and admiration for each other. So it was all about, well, of course, this makes sense, and this is how we feel, and this is how we believe, each other feels, and how we move forward, which makes for a very different document than if you're designing one based on people that are now in a situation where they maybe no longer have trust.
Right.
So that's what really gave us that incredible ability to shift, because the mindset is so different when we're doing this proactively.
Absolutely.
And people really are protected, again, from the legal perspective. They are protected in that the lawyers are there and help them consider what the ramifications will
Sure.
be. And at the same time, as I've indicated earlier, they really do think well. They think very clearly, and so they're able to assess what is going on. They just as a procedural point of view, how we worked as well. In the end, I think we had maybe 3 four-way meetings between the lawyers and the clients, actually 2, and then 1 signing meeting. So very focused work, and we were able to do that on the legal side because so much work had been done with Irene and with Linda in sorting out these issues. So the clients were able to draft not only a financial plan, and which was part of the cohabitation agreement as part of their life plan, and it was a very interactive process. So we had the use of Dropbox as an example. All the documents went in, all of the participants provided them, everybody could see them all the time. And there were some provisions in the agreement, especially with respect to the life plan, where I invited, or the lawyers invited the clients. We gave them an outline of what it could look like, but they were invited to do their draft, to do an initial draft, and then the lawyers might be able to work on that. And so we saw that happening, and it was just so clear that they had been informed and benefited from their discussions with Irene and with Linda when they're preparing this their own language as to how they would expect to be living together. And there were some provisions which we offered them to include, as an example, who's going to take out the garbage and who's going to do the cooking and that kind of thing. And quite frankly, they said, we're good with that. We don't want to cover that. There are other things more important to us. And as an example, they talked about the holidays, and both from their personal intentions and from a financial point of view.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
So they were quite interactive, and it was so in that sense it became a very positive thing. Linda, you also mentioned that, well, at least there was one other surprise, I think, on the financial end, where they ended up making more use of your financial planning services.
Once they were looking at doing, the savings on a regular basis, which one of the parties has already been doing anyways, then they were like, well, you know what, we'd really like to know a little bit more, or see what projections you could provide us to see where would we be for retirement. Even though we're young, it give us an idea, what can this money do for us if we stick to these kind of figures. And so it went beyond the 5-year term, but they still wanted to see that. It gave them some comfort to understand the value in continuing what they did, which in a way may have made sense more so because one had already been doing it and the other one hadn't. So it kind of reinforced, here's the value of this kind of practice.
And it created a very safe environment, because with you having that discussion with them, the two people are coming together
Absolutely.
and developing that plan. So
Yeah.
it's not one person's plan
No.
and then their partner's like, well, okay, that's all right. This really became their plan,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I found really allowed them to be able to explore it, but also commit to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt very much that they were, they felt that they had skin in the
Yeah.
game. That, like, all the way along, it really felt as if they were like, you know, they understood and they were committed, as if they had drafted it all by themselves, really.
Absolutely.
Which was, you know, which was amazing, and also very rewarding for, you know, them and us. I mean, it was a very positive experience to work with people from the end of things, that everybody's sort of happy and looking forward to positive outcomes.
Absolutely.
You know, even though it was a document that, okay, if we split up, this is what would happen, it was really still, you know, we felt comfortable. It's like finding out that your seatbelt didn't work, and this is like, no, this works fine.
That's right.
You know, I feel really safe.
Absolutely.
So Irene, I think these particular clients had a party afterwards.
They did.
And so can you talk to us about that?
They had a party, and it was quite fascinating, because as the part of this party, they spent a lot of time talking about this document that they had created with the help of the team. And we're literally pulling out the document for people to read and talking about how exciting it was. So it felt very good that this was something that wasn't just going to be a document that people sign off on and then they throw it somewhere for when they need it if things go wrong. This became something that said, no, look, we've been actively working on this, and here's what we've come out with, and we really think that this might be helpful to you. And so very much talking about the whole experience. So I thought that was great. I mean, that was in matching with the evaluations that they did, where they really were able to talk about what the process felt like and how they were the ones that were steering this. So they had the expertise to draw from, but it always felt like it was their process. And it always felt like the team was there to support them. And I think that really did empower them. And I think that's why they were both laughing individually about that. Yes, at their party, they were, you know, showing people the document, and people were flipping through it and reading parts. And so I think that really did demonstrate how much that was their document. Because here was their celebration of their relationship.
Right.
And here's the tool we're working on as part of that. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Sure beats fancy cake, eh?
Yeah.
Well, they thought so, and they thought it was worth investing certainly their money into this process. I think they thought they were investing in their relationship, which means a lot to them, and would of course be very important to them as they went on for the next 5 years and later on in life. So they saw it as an investment, and I think they felt they had a really good deal. And again, they were facilitated in these discussions. It's interesting, of course, that they thought they were certainly that the process was responsive to them, and I think it's at the same time it's important to remember that we are responsive, and at the same time we have a process, and so we're always open-minded as to how things are going to go, but we also very much have a plan, and we are applying collaborative principles, and in terms of how we're going to problem solve around these issues, and how we're going to have good, safe, courageous conversations.
Absolutely.
Right, which are going to help these people along. So these people happen to be so proud that at one point they even had went on the radio, and there was a bit of an interview with one of the local radio stations. So a very exciting project for us,
Yes.
and I think for them as well. And I think it just gives us a very good idea as to how helpful this process can be. So they were not of identical financial resources or financial strength, if I can put it that way. They weren't equal necessarily in terms of legal knowledge. Maybe one had a bit more than the other. These were people who had good communication skills and still benefited a great deal from their participation with professionals. And sometimes people think, well, we don't need that. We're fine. We get along, and we can have our conversations. And that was one of the learning points for me in this process, was that even those people who perform at such a high level benefited so much from the experience.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to common language again. So when you have a discussion about debt, both parties are now using the word in the same way.
Yeah.
When they're talking about, future planning and holidays and funding that, they're both thinking about the same plan. If we were to walk into any other home with a relationship, people can be using those words and feeling like they're having a conversation about it, but each of them is visualizing and thinking something very different. With this process, it really did allow them to understand, when we say this word, yes, we both have that same joint understanding of what that means. This is our plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly from, again, from the legal point of view, one could not ask for a better outcome or a better process. When we're preparing cohabitation agreements or marriage contracts or even a separation agreement,
Right.
where we want to be focused, and we expect people to understand the same thing from the language they are using.
Yeah.
And we know many times that doesn't quite happen, and we know what the end result of that is.
Right.
So, right, that this, again, so in that sense, we were, all of the professionals, I think, were feeling quite confident and quite safe
Yes.
in what the ultimate outcome was.
Oh yeah, sure. It always felt that it was very open, that you could broach any topic, and it wasn't going to start. You weren't pushing a button. It wasn't going to start an eruption, and that everybody was open to having any kind of conversation.
Absolutely.
And there was a fair amount of exchange then between the collaborative professionals, so certainly as you would expect between the lawyers to begin with, but also with the family professional and the financial professionals, so that the lawyers would be involved. And I understand the two of you had conversations as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it just was. It was a very supportive process for us as professionals as well, not only for the clients.
So this is, we would encourage people to think about this, communicate with us
Yeah.
if you wish. We'd be glad to talk about it, and we're certainly encouraging with our clients about the process, and to get them to start thinking about it. And sometimes that comes about where we can start up the process, and other times actually it just helps us be clearer with our own clients when we're trying to negotiate perhaps what is normally known as a cohabitation agreement or a marriage contract, and things are tense and not quite advancing, and now we have a better understanding, frankly, as to why that is, where the problems are, and many times we're able to better redirect the clients into getting some of those emotional conversations underway, and getting some of the financial conversations, as opposed to just coming to see the lawyers and maybe looking for a blueprint. So there are undoubtedly, or perhaps more challenging cases where there may be greater differences in the financial strengths or the legal understanding of the parties, but also where there are greater challenges emotionally. And if people could understand that, and once they do, that they're going to get further ahead working together in their relationship, and that's what the collaboration is about, then I think they're on the path. And they may very well, from there, be able to start working with collaborative lawyers as well.
Absolutely.
So, so from the legal perspective, we would encourage that. And many times, clients don't see their lawyers first. In
That's
fact,
right.
they see their family professional first and their financial planner first. So, as a result of this exercise, Irene, how would you treat a situation where somebody's coming in with a big change in their life and they're thinking about either setting up a relationship or engaging in a deeper and a closer relationship?
Well, I think it's really having that ability to talk about the tool and how it fits in each circumstance. So being able to say, yes, it's a good idea to be doing, that counseling piece or that mental health piece, but there are these other layers, and they all come together in a way that really allow you to find your way through this process. So in talking to a collaborative lawyer and talking to a financial professional, it may feel like that might not be what they want when they start talking about it, but when you're able to explain, now here are the steps, and here's how it follows through, and here's what it can help prevent, I think people are much more interested in exploring that process and really allowing themselves to say, okay, well, I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to hear what people have to say, because then they have that ability to see, no, wait, this is going to be a multi-step plan, no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm building a relationship or taking a part of a relationship. There is still that need to look at people as being multidimensional. And so there are a lot of important issues, and it really does provide safety for people. So I think in knowing that we have this and knowing what we were doing with collaborative law in the past, it really does allow a professional to say to families, this process can be designed based on your family. Here's the range and the scope of what can be covered. Your family will have their own plan, and we will do that as a team.
Great. And from a financial point of view, Linda, what do you...
I would certainly say, I think, in a number of ways, anybody I've spoken to about this since then, I've explained to them, how proactive it is, and the fact that many couples don't have the same vision, and they definitely don't have the same background in financial matters. A lot of times it's, you've come from a family where maybe debt was normal and that felt fine. And now you're with somebody else who, has been a saver their whole life. Well, right off the bat, you have a potential disadvantage. And if you don't have some of those conversations and you don't put things on the table and build up that education between both parties, it could be problematic. And so this way they can actually openly talk about it with somebody there that's going to support the weaker person, help bring that education in, and develop how you're going to deal with things.
Absolutely.
Rather than, somebody goes and spends like crazy and the other person's upset, and then you have an argument, or you have, like somebody feels that they didn't get listened to. And this way they do have that opportunity. And what better way to do something positive about building your relationship in a proactive, happy way, as to when you both really love each other, you're both very respectful, and you're willing to, spend some time and do some things that actually support you to continue being respectful and continue having, a good relationship. It's like fire insurance in a way, if you think about it. You buy fire insurance, you're not really anticipating having a fire, but you feel a little more comfortable knowing that if something happened, you've got something that'll protect you. This is exactly the same thing. You don't go into a relationship expecting it to fail. Nobody does that. But you do this, and so you've actually put insurance in place that, if something didn't go this way, this is how we would deal with it, and just puts you in a much better situation. I mean, actually having the conversation right off the bat may be the tool that then allows you to never have to break up.
Yeah, absolutely. And because that common language is there, you're not having arguments that feel like something else.
That's
but
right.
They're avoiding talking about money.
Yeah.
Or they're avoiding talking about extended family issues or fears or concerns. Right?
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
we've really established common language. They've had comfort in those conversations. They can continue that on in our absence.
Yeah, because I mean, to a certain degree, it's an education piece even if they don't realize it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I would say, I mean, everybody has communication problems because none of us speak as clearly as we really would like to.
Absolutely.
Identifying that there is a communication problem is a great step. And then being able to learn some tools that you're like, you know what, that worked then, let's do that again. You know, it just
Right.
puts you in such a stronger position.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of teaching going on that ensures or that leads to much more positive daily living for the clients and also for their relationship to be more long lasting.
Absolutely.
Right. So a pretty big bang for your buck, I would
Absolutely.
think, and something that people can think about and should think about for themselves and maybe for people that they know, and they may want to give a hand and help in ensuring that the relationship is going to be a long-lasting one and a pleasant one, with people able to deal with the issues. There are always challenges, we know, in even after you've these tools have been acquired.
Sure.
And at the same time, we know people are just in a better position to make it work when they want to.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I think that's what we have
Yeah.
to say, unless there's something more that we'd like to add. Yeah.
Go
No, I
ahead.
think we covered.
Yeah. And it's to know that there are also support documents that are available.
Yes.
And so if people have any questions, all of our information will be available, and not to hesitate for a moment to give any or all of us a call.
Sure. Or to retweak the documents
Yeah.
to fit your next
Absolutely.
family
To fit
situation.
your- Right.